Have you ever felt that peculiar shame, that quiet guilt that settles in your chest when you decline yet another invitation, when you choose the sanctuary of your own walls over the noise of the world outside? There is a woman I know, her name is Sarah, and 3 years ago she confessed something to me that she had never told anyone before. We were sitting by a window as the afternoon light painted golden streaks across the floor, and she said, with tears gathering in her eyes, "I feel broken because I love being home more than I love being anywhere else. The world tells me I should want more, that I should crave adventure and social gathering, but all I truly desire is the peace of my own space, the gentle rhythm of solitude, the sacred quiet that lives between these walls." Her words stayed with me, not because they were unusual, but because they were so profoundly honest, so nakedly human. In a culture that glorifies constant motion, perpetual socializing, and the restless pursuit of external experiences, those who find their deepest joy in the stillness of home are often made to feel as though something is wrong with them, as if their preference for solitude is a deficiency rather than a different way of touching the divine. But what if I told you that Walt Whitman, that great prophet of the soul, that singer of the democratic spirit and the cosmic self, understood this truth in a way that could liberate you completely from that shame? What if the very thing the world has taught you to question about yourself is actually a profound spiritual gift, a unique doorway to the infinite that others may never find? The secret that Whitman carried, the truth that pulses through every line of Leaves of Grass, is this: the divine does not live only in grand adventures, in crowded gatherings, in the external pursuit of experience. The divine lives most fully in the quiet communion between your soul and the immediate world around you, in the way you breathe in your own space, in the sacred ordinary moments that unfold when you are simply, beautifully, contentedly home. Today I am going to share with you Whitman's most liberating vision about the spirituality of home, about the profound psychology of those who find their truest selves not in the noise of the world, but in the gentle embrace of their own sanctuary, and how this understanding can transform your entire relationship with yourself, with solitude, with the very meaning of a life well lived. Whitman once walked past a small cottage at dusk, and through the window he saw a man sitting alone by candlelight, simply existing in his own presence. And Whitman stopped, transfixed, because he recognized in that solitary figure the entire cosmos at rest. He did not see loneliness. He did not see someone missing out on life. He saw a human being in perfect communion with existence itself, needing nothing from the outside world because everything essential was already present in the sacred space of self and home. This is the vision that most people never receive, the permission that society withholds, that your love of home is not a retreat from life, but an embrace of life in its most intimate, most genuine form. The spirituality of the homebody, as Whitman understood it, is the spirituality of depth over breadth, of presence over performance, of being over doing. When you are home, truly home, not hiding but residing, you enter a state of consciousness that the perpetually busy, the chronically social, may never access. You become aware of the small infinities that surround you, the way light changes throughout the day, the particular quality of silence in your space, the rhythm of your own breath unmediated by social performance, the gentle unfolding of time when you are not rushing toward the next thing. These are not small experiences, these are direct encounters with the eternal. There is a psychology to this preference, a spiritual architecture that Whitman intuited long before modern psychology could name it. Those who love being home are often individuals with a profound inner life, people whose richest experiences happen not in the external world, but in the internal landscape of thought, feeling, imagination, and spiritual awareness. They are not antisocial. They are deeply social with themselves, with the divine, with the quiet presences that inhabit a space when we finally stop moving long enough to notice them. Whitman writes of the self as containing multitudes, and for the homebody, home becomes the sacred container where those multitudes can finally speak, where the many voices of the soul do not have to compete with the noise of the world. Your preference for home may actually be a sign of spiritual sophistication, an indication that you have already discovered what others spend lifetimes searching for. The recognition that everything you need for a meaningful existence is not out there, but in here, not in accumulation of experiences, but in the depth of presence with what already is. But here is where I want to pause for a moment, and ask you something deeply personal, something that I have been reflecting on since I first encountered these truths in Whitman's work. When in your life did you first feel that tension between your love of home and the world's expectation that you should want something else? Was it in childhood, when you preferred reading alone to playing with others? Was it in your 20s, when friends could not understand why you would rather stay in than go out? Was it more recently when you felt that quiet shame creeping in, that sense that maybe you are missing out, maybe you are doing life wrong by choosing the peace of your own walls over the chaos of constant socializing? I know that perhaps you have never shared this feeling with anyone, because who could truly understand something so intimate, so apparently contrary to what we are told makes a good life? But here, in this space, you are truly seen and understood. Your preference for home is not a weakness, it is a spiritual orientation, a valid and valuable way of being human, and your willingness to honor it, despite the world's judgment, is an act of profound courage. I want to invite you to complete this sentence in the comments. My love of home has taught me that. Your honest reflection could be exactly what someone else needs to read today. A reminder that they are not alone in this preference, that their love of solitude is not something to fix, but something to honor. Take a breath right now and allow yourself to feel, not think, but feel what your home means to you, what gift it has given your soul that the outside world never could. If something in you feels called to share that truth, the comments below are a sacred space for your voice, and if you prefer to simply reflect in silence, that too is a profound way of honoring this journey. Now, not everyone who loves being home experiences it in the same way, and Whitman, in his infinite embrace of human diversity, would recognize this beautiful variation. There are those who love home as a creative sanctuary, for whom their space is a studio of the soul, where imagination flows without interruption, where the muse visits in the quiet hours. There are those who love home as a restorative refuge, people whose sensitivity to the world is so acute that they need the gentle embrace of familiar walls to recover from the overwhelming intensity of external stimuli. There are those who love home as a spiritual retreat, who have transformed their living space into a temple of contemplation, a place where they practice the art of presence, of meditation, of deep communion with the divine that dwells in stillness. And there are those who love home simply because it is where they feel most themselves, most authentic, most free from the masks and performances that social life demand. Each of these is a valid expression of the same underlying truth, that home, for certain souls, is not merely a place but a spiritual practice, not merely shelter, but sanctuary. Yet the journey of the homebody is not without its challenges, and here Whitman's wisdom becomes especially necessary. The greatest obstacle is not external but internal, the internalized voice of judgment that tells you your preference is wrong, that you should be more social, more adventurous, more willing to engage with the world on its terms. This voice is not your own. It is the voice of a culture that measures worth by visibility, that equates a full life with a full social calendar, that cannot comprehend that depth and richness can exist in apparent simplicity. Another challenge is the loneliness that can arise, not from being alone, but from feeling misunderstood, from the sense that others view your love of home as odd or deficient. There is also the very real risk of isolation, becoming avoidance, of home transforming from sanctuary into hiding place, from a chosen refuge into a fearful retreat. Whitman would remind you that there is a profound difference between solitude and isolation, between chosen stillness and fearful withdrawal. The spiritual homebody is not running from life, but running toward a deeper experience of it, not avoiding connection, but seeking a more authentic form of it. The transformation that Whitman offers, the shift in consciousness that can liberate you completely, begins with a radical reframing of what it means to live fully. The world defines a full life by external metrics: how many places you have traveled, how many people you know, how many experiences you can catalog. But Whitman understood that fullness has nothing to do with quantity and everything to do with quality of presence. A single afternoon spent truly present in your own space, aware of the play of light and shadow, attuned to the subtle movements of your own soul, can contain more genuine aliveness than a month of frantic activity undertaken to prove to yourself and others that you are living correctly. The transformation happens when you stop trying to be someone else's version of alive and start honoring your own soul's authentic needs. It happens when you recognize that your love of home is not a limitation, but a liberation, not a narrowing of life, but a deepening of it. It happens when you give yourself full permission to create a life that feels true from the inside, regardless of how it appears from the outside. This wisdom translates into practice in beautiful and unexpected ways. It means creating a home that truly reflects your soul, that is not designed to impress visitors, but to nourish your spirit, filled with the things that bring you genuine peace and joy, rather than the things you think you should have. It means establishing rituals of presence, the morning coffee savored in complete awareness, the evening hours spent reading or creating or simply sitting with your own thoughts, the practice of noticing how your space holds you, how it reflects back to you a version of yourself that the outside world rarely sees. It means learning to communicate your needs clearly and without apology to others, saying no to invitations not out of fear, but out of a genuine commitment to honoring your own rhythm, your own way of recharging and connecting with the divine. It means building connection on your terms, perhaps inviting others into your space, rather than always meeting them in theirs, creating intimate gatherings that honor your need for depth and quiet, rather than forcing yourself into loud, overwhelming social situations that leave you depleted. And most importantly, it means cultivating a spiritual practice that is rooted in the ordinary moments of home life, finding the sacred in washing dishes, in making your bed, in the simple acts of care that transform a house into a home and a home into a temple. There are, however, pitfalls to avoid, ways that even the genuine homebody can lose their way. One trap is using home as a place of complete disconnection, allowing solitude to calcify into isolation, letting the love of quiet space become an excuse to avoid all human connection, all vulnerability, all growth that comes from engaging with others. Whitman celebrated solitude, but he also celebrated the democratic embrace of humanity, the recognition that we are all connected in the great web of existence. Another error is romanticizing home to the point of rigidity, becoming so attached to your routine, your space, your way of being that you cannot adapt, cannot grow, cannot respond to the natural changes that life brings. Home should be a sanctuary, not a prison. A third mistake is judging others for their different needs, looking down on those who find energy and meaning in social engagement, in travel, in external adventure. Whitman's spirituality is radically inclusive. It honors all authentic ways of being human. Your love of home does not make you superior to those who love the world outside. It simply makes you different, and that difference is to be celebrated, not weaponized. The synthesis that Whitman offers, the great integration, is this: the division between home and world, between inner and outer, between solitude and society, is ultimately an illusion. The divine that you touch in the quiet of your home is the same divine that pulses through every leaf, every stranger, every experience beyond your walls. You do not choose home because the world is bad. You choose home because it is where you most easily access the truth of your own being. And from that truth, from that deep rootedness in self and spirit, you can then engage with the world in a way that is genuine rather than performative. The homebody who has done the inner work, who has used their solitude not for escape but for deepening, can then move through the world with a presence and authenticity that those who are always in motion rarely achieve. Your time at home is not wasted. It is the sacred work of becoming yourself, of touching the eternal, of discovering that the universe is not somewhere else but right here, in this room, in this breath, in this moment of simple, profound, beautiful being. Consider the deeper layers of this truth, the way Whitman saw home not as a physical location, but as a state of being, a consciousness that could be carried anywhere but was most easily accessed in the familiar embrace of one's own space. When you are home, when you are truly settled into your own sanctuary, you are practicing something that the ancient mystics understood but that modern culture has forgotten: the art of being rather than doing, the discipline of presence rather than productivity, the courage to exist fully in your own company without the constant distraction of external validation. There is a particular quality of time that emerges when you are home, a slow unfolding that stands in stark contrast to the rushed, fragmented nature of time in the outside world. Minutes stretch and deepen. Hours become containers for genuine experience rather than mere transitions between obligations. You begin to notice things that faster living obscures: the way afternoon light pools on the floor in a particular corner, the sound of rain on your roof that becomes a kind of music, the smell of your own space that carries within it the accumulated presence of all your moments lived there, the subtle shifts in your own energy as the day moves from morning to evening. These observations are not trivial. They are the building blocks of a contemplative life, the raw material from which genuine spiritual awareness is constructed. Whitman understood that the soul requires a certain amount of unstructured time, a certain quality of spaciousness, in order to reveal itself. In the constant motion of social life, in the performance required by public spaces, the deeper parts of who we are remain hidden, waiting for the safety and privacy of home to emerge. Those who love being home are often those whose inner lives are so rich, so complex, so demanding of attention that they need significant stretches of uninterrupted solitude just to process, to integrate, to understand what they are experiencing internally. This is not selfishness. It is self-care in its most profound sense. It is the recognition that you cannot give to the world what you have not first given to yourself. The gift of your full attention, the space to feel deeply, the time to think clearly, the permission to simply be without agenda or expectation. The homebody is engaged in a continuous act of self-communion, a practice of checking in with the many voices that comprise the self, listening to what the body needs, what the emotions are expressing, what the spirit is yearning for, what the mind is processing. This internal conversation cannot happen adequately in the noise and distraction of constant external engagement. It requires the quiet container of home, the gentle boundaries of familiar space, the freedom from social performance that allows the authentic self to finally speak. There is also a sensory dimension to this preference that Whitman, with his exquisite sensitivity to physical experience, would absolutely recognize. For many who love being home, the world outside is simply too much, too loud, too bright, too crowded, too stimulating in ways that feel overwhelming rather than enlivening. This is not weakness. It is a particular configuration of the nervous system, a heightened sensitivity that can be both gift and challenge. In your own space, you can control the sensory environment in ways that allow you to remain regulated, calm, present. You can choose the lighting that soothes rather than agitates, the sounds that comfort rather than jar, the level of social interaction that energizes rather than depletes. You can move through your day at a pace that honors your natural rhythm, rather than forcing yourself into the frenetic tempo that modern life demands. For the sensitive soul, home is not just an emotional sanctuary, but a physical one. A place where the body can finally relax the constant vigilance it must maintain in overwhelming environment. And when the body relaxes, the soul can expand. When you are not using all your energy just to manage sensory input, you have energy available for deeper things, for creativity, for spiritual practice, for the kind of presence that is the foundation of all genuine transformation. Whitman also knew something that our culture has largely forgotten, that there is a profound relationship between place and identity, between the spaces we inhabit and the selves we become. Your home is not just where you live. It is a physical manifestation of your inner world, a three-dimensional representation of your values, your aesthetics, your way of being in the world. When you arrange your space with intention, when you surround yourself with objects that carry meaning and beauty for you personally, rather than objects chosen to impress others, you are engaged in a spiritual practice, a form of prayer through design. Every choice you make about your environment is a statement about who you are and what you hold sacred. The books on your shelves are not just books. They are the companions of your mind, the teachers of your soul. The art on your walls is not just decoration. It is a window into what moves you, what makes you feel more alive, what connects you to something larger than yourself. The colors you choose, the textures you prefer, the way light enters your space, all of these are expressions of your unique consciousness, your particular way of perceiving and receiving the world. And when you spend time in a space that truly reflects your authentic self, you are continually reminded of who you are beneath all the roles and masks that social life requires. Home becomes a mirror that shows you your truest face, a sanctuary where you can return to yourself again and again, especially after periods of time when the outside world has pulled you away from your center. But perhaps the most radical thing that Whitman understood about the spiritual psychology of the homebody is this: solitude is not the absence of connection, but a different kind of connection, one that moves vertically toward the divine rather than horizontally toward other humans. When you are alone in your home, truly present and aware, You are not disconnected from life. You are connected to life at its source. You are in communion with existence itself, with the vast intelligence that animates all things, with the silence that underlies all sound, with the stillness that makes all movement possible. This is not loneliness. This is aloneness in its most sacred sense. The experience of being all one with everything, paradoxically accessed through solitary presence rather than through social engagement. Whitman wrote of containing multitudes, and for the homebody, those multitudes are not theoretical, but experiential. In solitude, you discover that you are never truly alone because you contain within yourself entire universes of thought, feeling, memory, imagination, potential. You carry within you the voices of everyone you have ever loved, the wisdom of every teacher you have encountered, the presence of every experience that has shaped you. And beyond even that, you carry the divine spark, the fragment of cosmic consciousness that is your essential nature, always present but rarely noticed in the noise and busyness of constant external engagement. The homebody, then, is not someone who is afraid of the world, but someone who has discovered something that the world cannot give, the peace that passes understanding, the joy that arises from simply being alive without needing anything from life, the sense of completeness that comes not from accumulating experiences, but from fully experiencing what is already present. This is not complacency. It is contentment in the deepest spiritual sense, the recognition that you already have everything you need for a meaningful existence right here, right now, in this simple present moment, in this simple sacred space. And from this foundation of contentment, from this deep rootedness in your own being, you can then choose to engage with the world not because you need it to complete you, but because you have something to offer from the fullness of your own inner resources. This is the great paradox that Whitman lived and taught, that the person who has gone deepest into solitude often has the most to give in relationship, that the one who has cultivated the richest inner life can be most present to others, that true connection comes not from need but from overflow, not from emptiness seeking to be filled but from fullness seeking to be shared. In the end, what Whitman understood, and what he invites you to understand, is that there is no single correct way to live, no universal template for a meaningful existence. Some souls are meant to roam, to explore, to seek the divine in constant movement and endless variety of experience. And some souls are meant to stay, to deepen, to find the infinite in the particular, the cosmic in the intimate, the eternal in the everyday rhythms of a life lived close to home. Neither is better. Neither is more spiritual. They are simply different paths up the same mountain, different ways of touching the same truth. Your love of home, your preference for the quiet sanctuary of your own space, is not something to overcome or apologize for. It is a spiritual gift, a unique doorway to the divine that you must honor if you are to live with integrity and authenticity. The world will continue to misunderstand you. People will continue to suggest that you need to get out more, to be more social, to live more adventurously, and you can smile gently at their concern, knowing that they cannot see what you see, cannot feel what you feel in the sacred stillness of your home. You are not missing out on life. You are living it in your own way, deeply and truly and completely. There is a particular grace that comes to those who have made peace with their love of home, who have stopped trying to be someone they are not, and have instead embraced the unique shape of their own soul. This grace manifests as a kind of inner calm, a settledness that is palpable to others even if they cannot name it. When you are no longer fighting against your own nature, when you are no longer expending energy trying to convince yourself that you should want what others want, that energy becomes available for living your actual life rather than the theoretical life you think you should be living. You become more creative because you are spending time in the environment where your creativity flows most naturally. You become more spiritually attuned because you are creating the conditions that allow for genuine contemplation and inner listening. You become more emotionally balanced because you are honoring your needs rather than overriding them in service of social expectations. And paradoxically, you often become more capable of meaningful connection because when you do engage with others, you are doing so from a place of fullness rather than depletion, from choice rather than obligation, from genuine desire for communion rather than fear of being alone. Whitman would remind you that the goal of a spiritual life is not to transcend your humanity, but to fully inhabit it. not to become some idealized version of yourself, but to become more completely who you already are. And if who you are is someone who finds peace, meaning, and divine connection in the quiet sanctuary of home, then your spiritual practice is to honor that truth without apology or shame. This might mean creating boundaries with people who do not understand your needs, kindly but firmly declining invitations that would deplete rather than nourish you, explaining to loved ones that your preference for home is not a rejection of them, but an affirmation of yourself. It might mean redesigning your work life to allow for more time at home, choosing a career that supports your need for solitude over one that society deems more prestigious, but that would require constant external engagement. It might mean building a small circle of deep relationships rather than a large network of shallow ones, investing your relational energy in quality over quantity, in people who appreciate your depth rather than judge your introversion. And it certainly means developing a personal narrative about your life that centers your values rather than society's values, a story in which your love of home is not a limitation, but a defining feature of your spiritual path, not something to overcome, but something to celebrate and cultivate. Think of how Whitman lived, how he moved through the world with such confidence in his own perceptions, such unapologetic embrace of his own way of seeing and being. He did not allow others to define for him what constituted a worthy life, what counted as real experience, what made someone valuable or virtuous. He trusted his own soul's compass absolutely, and that trust liberated him to create work that has touched millions precisely because it came from a place of authentic self-knowledge rather than conformity to external expectations. You have that same capacity within you, that same ability to trust your own inner knowing even when it contradicts the dominant narratives of your culture. Your love of home is not random. It is a clue to your particular form of genius, your unique way of accessing and expressing the divine. Some people find the sacred in mountaintops and distant lands. You find it in your living room when the afternoon light hits just right, in your kitchen when you are preparing a simple meal with full presence, in your bed when you wake slowly and spend the first moments of the day simply noticing that you are alive and breathing and here. These moments are not less valuable than grand adventures. They are simply differently valuable, and their value is not diminished by the fact that others may not understand or appreciate them. What would it mean to fully own your love of home, to stop apologizing for it, to stop trying to justify it, to stop measuring yourself against standards that were never meant for you? What would it feel like to move through the world with the quiet confidence that comes from knowing you are living in alignment with your deepest truth? What could you create? What could you become? What could you offer from the deep well of peace and presence that you cultivate in the sanctuary of your home? These are not rhetorical questions. They are invitations to a different way of being, a way that Whitman modeled, and that is available to you right now if you can muster the courage to claim it. The courage required is not the courage to go out and do more, to push yourself beyond your comfort zone in ways that violate your nature. It is the courage to stay true to yourself, to honor your needs, to build a life that feels right from the inside even if it looks strange from the outside. This is perhaps the hardest courage of all, because it requires you to disappoint others, to let go of their approval, to accept that you may be misunderstood or judged. But it is also the only courage that leads to genuine peace, to authentic living, to a life that at the end you can look back on and say, "This was mine, this was true, this was enough." If these words have touched that quiet place in your heart that has longed for permission, for validation, for the simple acknowledgement that your way of being is not wrong but beautifully, perfectly right for you, then I invite you, not as someone who has all the answers, but as a fellow traveler on this journey, to subscribe to this channel. Here you will find a community of souls who understand that spirituality is not always loud, not always public, not always about going out into the world, but sometimes about going deeper into yourself. By subscribing, you become part of a circle of seekers who honor the path of depth, who recognize that a life well lived is not measured by how much you do, but by how present you are to what you are doing, by how authentic you are to your own soul's deepest need. This channel exists to remind you, week after week, that your sensitivity, your introversion, your love of home and solitude is not a flaw to be fixed, but a feature of your unique spiritual architecture. And if this reflection resonated with you, if it gave you even a moment of relief from the judgment you have carried, I would be honored if you would leave a like, not for me, but as a small act of self-affirmation, a quiet declaration that you are ready to honor your own truth. Together we are creating a space where the homebodies, the deep feelers, the quiet seekers can finally breathe freely and know that they are seen, understood, and celebrated exactly as they are. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being you.